Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about being a quad right and just my journey to understanding what it really means to be a quad right and how other parts of my chart kind of interplay into all of this. I've done another video on how I believe quad rights are possibly like a fifth type almost, just because in my own personal experience, I'm finding that I take on a lot of traits of not just being a manifestor, but also a generator and a reflector and projector as well. So being a quad right, especially as I get deeper into my deconditioning journey and I do a lot of my own, if you want to call it, healing work, where you kind of just start to peel back a lot of these layers of not self, and you become much more aware of your energy and what's yours and what's not yours, and what is environmental and societal conditioning. And it's very destabilizing in a lot of ways, because basically everything you know and have been taught are, I don't want to say lies, but they're not who you are. So it's like a complete shattering of belief systems and identities and thoughts, and just like your entire life is kind of like a lie. And so this whole deconditioning process, using human design, like seeing it through the lens of human design, has been really exciting and interesting to contemplate and observe. And especially being a quad right, because as you go through this process, you begin to get more sensitive to your energy and the energy of people around you, and absolutely no judgment. There is no right or wrong to any of this. It's just, when you're around other people, especially as a quad right, you start to pick up on not just the what a person is actually saying. You're listening to the frequency of their voice and the energy that they're putting out and the intention that they're putting out, and you're just picking all of that up outside of physical cues and everything. And so it's almost like being a quad right, you can really understand deeply what the true intention of a person is, and whether they're healthy or not, or if they're trying to get something from you. And I'm also thinking about my cognition is feeling, so it almost amplifies that. And then also having a completely open heart, I'm really able to see what's a healthy ego and what's not a healthy ego. Or so when you're interacting with another person, being a quad right, you're just picking up on all of these things. And so I'm actually finding that it's so much easier for me to be one-on-one with people as I'm learning to get to know myself, because that other person is constantly reflecting parts back to me. And so it's way less overwhelming than being in a crowd full of people, which, by the way, being around a ton of people is not my cup of tea. I love to go to cafes because I'm in a kitchen's environment. So I think that's something that's very natural for me. And I'm a fourth line, and I tend to run into a lot of my friends there because I live in a small town, and I actually really, really love that. But I'm kind of in my own little world, and it's almost like I can shut off what's going on around me, being a kitchen's environment, and I can be in my own world. But when someone comes into my space and their aura contacts mine, I'm able to pick up on their energy. And so I'm noticing that when I am in a cafe or busier settings, I'll start to feel a different way, and I'll immediately just start to be oh, probably something I ate, or I can't think clearly, or whatever, when in reality someone just sat close to me and I'm picking up on their staticky energy that's actually impacting my mental state and my physical state and my energetic state. And I say this and I'm sharing this because it's something I've really been experimenting with, that I've just become more and more aware of, because I spend so much time in my home. And then when I do go out, I work at a cafe probably 2 or 3 times a week, and I might spend time with 1 or 2 friends here and there, but it's one-on-one most of the time, or very small groups. But the bulk of my time is honestly just with myself. And so I'm able to really go out and then come back and contemplate and see like what the effects were on my energy, and say, take ownership of what's mine, and take reflections on, okay, I was around this person, and if I know their human design, it's even more helpful because I get to see how they might be conditioning me, and I get to work through my emotional wave in my own space. And so just being a quad right, you have this ability to really step back and just be an observer, and just be highly aware of like actually how sensitive we are. Because I was the type of person that would love to go to concerts and to like be in really busy places, and now I'm like, you couldn't pay me to go to an amusement park. It was something that I did a lot last year, and the more that I went, I was like, it was like slowly killing me because it's just like you're around so much energy, and as a quad right, you're taking all of that in, and then you need so much rest in order to really integrate all of the energies that you were taking in. And most of the time they're like really shitty energies anyway, so it's like you don't even want to deal with that. So it's just it feels better to be in your own space and to choose people that are pulling really amazing things from you and reflecting really amazing things back to you, and like those are your people. And so immediately, like, well, as an emotional being, I tend to like need to spend time with somebody a handful of times before I really get clear about, okay, is this person somebody I want to hang out with? What are they pulling from me? What is the quality of the conversation? Is this, you know, impacting the collective consciousness in a way that's actually progressive and positive, which is, you know, very in alignment with my incarnation cross and just like my purpose in life. And if it's not, then I just extricate myself from that situation or that person, or I just flat out don't even respond because it's not even worth my energy anymore. And so I'm just getting very selective with who I spend my time with. And if I'm in a situation where I've said yes to something and I'm not able to like leave or whatever, like I like constrict the amount of time that I'm actually there. And so that's like another really big thing that I've been playing around with too and experimenting with, because there's no right or wrong, and I'm not hard on myself at all about, you know, say I'm spending time with somebody, I've made a commitment and I'm allowing a relationship or relationships to end, and I've gotten clarity about it, and there's almost like this completion or closing out where I'm spending one last final moment with them, and it just completely confirms like, okay, the quality of conversations are really not that great, and they might be drinking alcohol or doing all of these things that are just not in alignment with me, and great if it's an alignment for them, but it's just not for me. And so I'm more concerned about not necessarily protecting my energy. It's just I'm creating and living a life that is worthwhile for me. And you know, it's not about like, oh, everything's love and light, and you can't have this whole life where everything's perfect and no one can affect you negatively. Well, guess what? You kind of can. Like if you're creating your own reality, like you can. And I say that with the background of like, I'm also doing my own work in my own space. So I'm not running around smiling all the time. I have my breakdowns, and I have a lot of shadow stuff and like conditioning that is coming up for me to work through, and a lot of trauma for me to work through. But I'm not sharing that in this video, but it is something that goes on. So it's not just like, oh, I'm only going to like do these things and it's very selfish. No, I'm in a space where I'm being very intentional about what I'm doing with my energy and where I'm putting my time. And so as a quad right, if I'm going to be around people who are pulling out like really low consciousness type things, I'm not going to spend time with them. And if they're doing that, I'm not going to sit there and try to explain to them why I don't want to hang out with them. I'm just not going to hang out with them anymore. It's really that simple. And this journey can seem very selfish to a lot of people looking on the outside, but when you're intentionally choosing the life that you want to live, and you have this completely expanded awareness of, you know, what you're actually really taking in and how it affects you, you know, you're going to live your life very much differently than the average person, or like 99.99999% of the population being that receptive-minded person. And that's also another thing too, like I've really been playing around with, is that just being in flow, because, you know, we have to work and we have these 9 to 5 jobs. And as I'm continuing down my deconditioning journey, it's like I work maybe 10, 20 hours a week, and that's more than enough to pay my bills. And I've worked to get to this position, but it required a lot of surrendering and a lot of saying no to things and to people and to jobs and opportunities for me to make money because they weren't in alignment with me. And the more that I do that and the more that I'm in flow, like there are days where I just wake up and I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk on the beach, and I'm going to go sit in contemplation or meditation, or I'm going to go like skateboard, or, you know, whatever it is that I want to do that day, without having any agenda or anything that I want to do or like I have to do for my work. And to me, I'm slowly starting to get into that flow, and it's very bumpy because you're slowly weeding out things and like distractions that are preventing me from saying like, oh, I'm gonna have this whole day free, and because you have work and all of these things. So it feels a little weird because I've kind of become more aware of this over the past year. Like when I was in Mexico, I had all the space, and there were days where I just felt like I was floating, and it felt very destabilizing. And so I think that there's just like a balance that one can find with having some sort of schedule, or having some sort of balance in their life, because we are still operating under this cross of planning and this kind of generator run world, and we're transitioning. And as quad rights, we're like this bridge that is going to, like, we're going to basically help the people who are very left-brained or who are not super aware as the coming shift happens in 2027. And, you know, that requires a lot of our own experimentation and like fully stepping into ourselves and really fully owning and understanding and knowing what it means to be a quad right. And people don't necessarily understand that unless they've really gone through it, because we're picking up on so much. And I think like being alone is probably one of the best things that a quad right can do right off the bat in order to really get to know themselves and just sit in contemplation and get to really know and understand yourself and observe yourself. And then also understand and know when you're out and about with other people, they are constantly reflecting back to you their level of consciousness and like whether they're correct for you or not, based on how you're speaking and the quality of the words that and actions that are coming out of your mouth, like just being aware of that conditioning that's going on. So these are really big things that I've been experimenting with as a quad right, just being in flow and having it still feel kind of destabilizing. But I do make sure to have at least 1 or 2 days where I have nothing on my calendar and just allow things to flow. And like I said, that could just be like a 2 or 3 hour beach walk where I'm cleaning up the beach and I'm listening to an audio, and then someone contacts me and they're like, hey, do you want to do something? And I'm like, sure, why not? And then I end up spending the entire day with them in deep conversation, and it's like so beautiful. And I can see as a manifestor how I'm having an impact on somebody else because I'm being receptive and flow with my actual day, and I'm not trying to plan everything. And so there are so many different aspects of your chart that actually play into this. And I say like being a quad right is kind of like being a 5th type, because I notice how I am almost waiting to respond to things. Even as a manifestor, like, yes, I initiate. I do have those moments where I have those urges and I just go do them. But there are moments where I feel like I'm just floating and I'm like, okay, what's next? And then somebody sends me a message or I see something and I'm responding to it. And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with that at all. Like, someone could say, well, you're acting like a generator. Okay, well, fuck it. Yeah, I'm acting like a generator, but I don't care because it's in flow and it feels correct for me. And I've waited out an emotional wave in order to find clarity on something. And so I don't think that there's anything necessarily bad about that. It's just an experimentation and what label that you want to put on it. So that's how I think like I can act like a generator or a manifesting generator sometimes, is because I'm responding to things. But then also at the same time, like I had an experience the other week where I was invited to somebody's house and, just chatting with people, and I was being invited to play the guitar, and I was being invited to share my experiences, and I felt very seen. And then the impact of what I was sharing and the frequency of my voice, having the 1222 channel and seeing the impact it had on everybody, and like getting them to think about things. And I felt like it was like kind of almost like a projector manifestor like moment where I was being invited to share, but then I could also see the impact of me speaking and sharing, and how that was impacting other people. And I was around like a bunch of really conscious individuals, and so the conversations that ensued after that, it was like I got to gauge, like I was speaking with different people one-on-one, and I could tell with each person whether like almost, I don't want to say like their level of consciousness, but like I could see where their energy and their self-awareness was at. And each conversation was so different, and I was able to see that based on like being able to be with each person one-on-one. And again, absolutely no judgment, like these people and anyone else, I have no judgment about anyone. Everyone's on their own journey. It's just me being like, okay, where do I want to go, and who do I want to hang out with, and who do I feel good around, and really honing in on that and getting very clear on that, so that I can also have a quality of life as well. Because if I'm hanging out with shitty people, like that's gonna be the level of quality of my life that I'm walking around playing out. And so being a quad right, it's like you're really learning how to live a life of intention and going very, very slow, like not rushing into things, because as quad rights, we're constantly taking in all of this information. And if we're taking in too much information, which has been something that has happened to me in the past, or like happens to me because, life, it's like, one day I might be in meetings for 3 or 4 hours, and then I might go and practice Spanish for an hour, and then I'll go work on like human design content for an hour or two. And by the end of the day, my brain is like, feels so condensed because I've been in these energies. And then, I was in a coffee shop, and so I'm taking in the frequency and the energy of the people around me as well. So by the end of the day, it's like my brain is shot. And since I have been using and engaging my brain so much, I'm also having to consume more food, more energy. So as a quad right, if you're using your mind more, you're gonna be like eating more food. And so I've put on weight because I've been in a more of a mental state of engaging myself mentally throughout the day. And again, nothing wrong with that, just observing it and saying this is how we experience the world and how it really affects us. And so when I'm in a mentally stimulating, day that's like that long, and I'm doing that much stuff, like there needs to be time where I'm in complete silence, or I'm going for a walk, or I'm sitting in meditation, or I'm journaling and getting it all out, or I'm just like sending voice notes back and forth to my friends all day, because I just need to like get some of this out in order for me to observe and see, almost like a mental projector, or someone who has a self-projected authority. It's like I need to talk things out in order to see where I'm at, or like what's coming up inside of me and what I've been picking up on. And that's like another way that I can discharge, but then also be an observer of my process and like how I'm really working through information, and saying, do I need to think this, or do I need to keep this, or do I need to have this like quality of thought running around in my head rent free. So just having that reflection of speaking out loud is actually really helpful. But a lot of times, like I would say movement is kind of like the biggest thing too. Like silence and movement are like really amazing for quad rights, because the movement of the body, it's like you're able to move energy that might be stuck or stagnant, because we are so bogged down. And like even when I was in Mexico, I did a 3-week Spanish immersion, and I stayed at a host house, and I was going to class in the morning for a couple of hours, and then I was going to class in the afternoon for a couple of hours, and then at night it was like I was so mentally exhausted, and I was putting on weight because I was taking in so much information, and I didn't have the space to just like be in my own space because I was living with somebody else, and I felt this pressure to like study and take advantage of being there. And then by the third week, I physically got sick. Like I was throwing up, and my body was telling me like, no more, like you need to go and like be alone and be able to like integrate all of this information because it's just too much for you. And so as quad rights, we really need that time alone and that space to integrate when we're taking in a lot of information, not just energetically, but also just like being mentally stimulated. And it may seem like super extreme, but I feel like the more that you go into your deconditioning experiment and you really get to know yourself as a quad right and you're peeling back all these layers, there's like hyper sensitivity that we weren't aware of before because our nervous systems were so tense and they were so used to like having things thrown at it that it's like we were used to that. But when we start to soften and we start to release a lot of that conditioning, then it can feel like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. And it's like, no, you're actually just coming home to yourself because you realize how harsh you've been on your body. And not that that's a bad thing, it's just what we've been taught and what we've been conditioned. But at the end of the day, like we really are highly sensitive beings. And when we allow that to be a potential like belief system as part of our journey, I don't know if I'll necessarily always be like this, but you know, in part of the deconditioning journey as a quad right, I'm experiencing that I do need this space and I do need this time to observe myself and to see how others are affecting me and how my environment is affecting me. And that has looked a lot like me becoming more sensitive to everything, and then also giving myself compassion for it and not being hard on myself about it, because you know, I've also been doing a lot of like somatic therapy and all of these things that are showing me where I'm holding tension in my body and where I'm holding, like, I don't want to say traumas in my body, but a lot of conditioning. And when you release those layers, you're like, oh my gosh, I was sitting here with my stomach clenched the entire day, and you're like, oh, like I can release. And you're like, holy shit, I didn't even realize like my shoulders were up, or like I was tensing my stomach, or like I was clenching my hands for half the day. And we're not aware of like what's going on in the body. And so I think that's just a natural part of like getting connected to your body and your authority, and just being more in tune with your body and how everything is affecting you, but then also see where it's been affecting you your entire life. And so as you said, there is definitely a process of becoming more sensitive, and I cannot speak to whether I'm going to be like this forever, or if this is like a natural state, or if it's something that, you know, we get stronger in and we're able to handle more once we've reached a more regulated state. I'm only like 3 or 4 years into my experiment, so probably like 1 or 2 into like really exploring what it means to be a quad right. So I can't really speak to that, but in the future I'm sure I will make a video on this. So yeah, this has been my experience for the past year or 2, just observing myself as a quad right, and especially like the last 6 or 7 months, I was basically living out of my car. It was like very traumatic. I went through a very deep spiritual awakening where so much of the old was falling away to the point where I'm like kind of unrecognizable to myself. And I was living with other people and bouncing around into different Airbnbs and like living with families and living with my family, and like it was very destabilizing, but it was also like in a beautiful time for me to use the relationships and the environments as a time of like reflection and being able to see how it was affecting me and my energy, and seeing it from the lens of human design and then being a quad right. And so now that I'm in a space where I have a very spacious 2-bedroom apartment and I'm like right across from the beach, and you know, I have this space to myself, the contrast is like incredible. And so I've been giving myself some time to really sit with all of this before sharing this in a video. And there's just so much more that I want to talk about. And so I'm just, again, being in flow, and I decided, okay, I have some time, and so I'm going to sit here and do a video, and it felt right and it felt in flow. And so here I am. And there's no rhyme or reason about when I share content on social media or when I share things on YouTube. Like, I planned out all my yoga videos and I got completely burnt out. I planned out like 2 or 3 months of yoga videos and I was filming them and editing them nonstop, like spending maybe 10, 20 hours on a video that really doesn't get that many views. And so that was a lesson in itself that I was not in flow. And so like coming back to this, all right, I'm just going to be more receptive and not plan anything. And it's like, when I post my last video, when I post my last social media post, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to do next. And I'm like really learning how to get comfortable in that, to be in that receptiveness of, and then trusting that things will channel and flow through me. And normally what happens is I get an urge or I get something that comes through me that just completely channels and brings all these new things to share. And it's going to be different for everyone. Like, I'm a manifestor with the 3536 and the 1222. So like, and I'm on the incarnate right angle cross of consciousness too. And so my whole purpose is like, been there, done that. I'm going to have experiences and I'm going to tweak and see them and see the patterns in them and see how we can actually progress the consciousness of the collective in new and different ways, whether it's fixing or changing something new that's already been done or just having completely new experiences and then sharing that, because that 3536 is a collective channel. And then I also have that 6447 as another collective channel as well. And so it really depends on the chart, but this has been my journey and kind of like the why of like how I do things and why I do things, because not everyone's as a receptive being is going to want to share and do all of this. These are just aspects of my chart and I love it. Like, there's so much joy that comes from sharing all of this. And I hope it is beneficial to anyone watching who's a quad right or even just a receptive being, but it goes so deep. And I'm going to share so much more with all of you in the future. So if any of you have any questions, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your experiences as a quad right. If you'd love to learn more, you're just starting out or new in your journey, or you just want to have somebody to talk to, just go to my website, nina-elise.com. I create blueprints which includes your chart and a lot of information about your centers and your channels and your incarnation cross. And then I also work one-on-one with people who are going through this deconditioning process as well. So don't be shy, send a note or leave a comment below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.